Well, what is going on, guys? I'm going to give a few seconds to let everybody get piled in here. We have a packed show today. For those of you that don't know, I was out at the game this weekend. So, luckily, my voice recovered a little bit. Yesterday, I didn't have really any voice at all. And today, it's a little raspy, but we're getting there. But it was an incredible weekend, as we all saw from the game, and just kind of the entire conversation around the atmosphere in general, and just the overall play of the team, and Nebraska kind of getting that love that we kind of expected in previous years, or led up to in previous years. However, Nebraska didn't follow through on it, and it was the yearly thing, right? Like Nebraska overhyped again and again. So this win was huge in many ways, other than it just being Colorado naturally, right? It gave Dylan Raiola a great experience in terms of being able to go under the lights, high pressure in prime time, in a big environment, and not have to play a team like an Ohio State, you know, a team that were really kind of an underdog against. It gave him that experience against a team Nebraska was favored to beat and physically manhandled. And I think that's very important for him moving forward, because I was sitting there thinking about it, and I know we all kind of feel a nervousness as a fan base, going into, the night before a game, the anxiety, the little bit of nervousness and stuff like that. And I was thinking to myself, imagine being an 18-year-old kid and laying in bed that night, and just the amount of anxiousness and pressure that he feels, or, the anxiety leading up to the game. And I think that really, thinking about that really put in perspective to me just how much of a dog Dylan is. And we heard Mekhi Gaber say it last week, I believe it was Mekhi, about just how much of a dog Dylan is. And that's exactly what he was talking about, right? He's played his entire life at winning programs, been under pressure, been under extreme pressure, and has been able to manage that. And that transpired into this game. Again, he didn't seem phased, didn't seem rattled. And I'm sure he felt it. But to me, there's something about a confidence where, when somebody isn't confident in themselves, or overly anxious about the moment, right? I don't think they're going to do the things Dylan did, where, again, week one, where he came out UTEP doing this, or, how he went out there and fired the crowd up like before the game. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, you want to get out there and play a little bit, get in a rhythm, then start doing those things. It felt like he knew he was going to go in there and he was going to, do his job. It seems he's very confident as a quarterback, and that all comes in preparation, right? The reason why Dylan's so good, and we've heard the coaching staff talk about this, even Satterfield today, it's preparation. It's all in his preparation. And the thing about it is, if you know that you did everything in your power to prepare for that week, you're not going to have any doubt in your mind. You did your job, right? There's nothing more you could have done. Now, if you go into that with doubt, then that's where it sneaks in. Yeah, I probably didn't do this, right? What am I nervous about? I probably didn't prepare enough on this, that, and the third. Now, other than that, preparing, for Dylan, it just kind of, we got to see the defense go up against, the 3-5 defense go against a spread them out offense with a bunch of athletes. And that's kind of what the defense was designed for. And it was a really good test for our defensive backs to just kind of see, them run with the athletes that they got. Tommy Hill looked locked down all night, as, we've kind of expected this entire offseason. I did a video about 5 months ago, and in the video I said, I think he is a first-round pick. And a lot of people scoffed at that at first, and now more people are coming around on the fact that, he could be a first-round pick. I know people were talking about second round prior to the season, but yeah, very impressive performance by him. His ball skills are incredible. The way he baited that throw, that's all ball skills. Him being a wide receiver plays such a huge part, and his growth into being such a good defensive back. And then also just, he put on the extra weight, and it hasn't hurt his speed at all. He just seems a little bit more explosive, has a little bit even more of a first step, and it's paying dividends. And we've seen Tommy Hill take yet another jump. And last season, of course, he started playing more, got better as the season went along, and we're going to see probably the same thing this year we're going to see that from the entirety of the team. So I'm going to get into some of your comments here, and as you come in, just leave your comments, thoughts about the game. We're going to dive into those questions that you may have. We got a few things to go into, so we're going to dive into some of the breakdown of the Colorado game. We're also going to get into the Christian Jones commitment, running through the PFF grades of the team overall in that Colorado game as well, and just looking a little bit forward to Northern Iowa. So put your thoughts in the comments, and I will run through those as we go along. So Dion's in here, go Big Red. Dion has a lot of quiet confidence, and he's aggressive 100%. And just the way he carries himself at the podium, he's a leader. He already has, it seems he's, well matured beyond his years, even in the way he talks to the media, and he doesn't really give anything other than his honesty and his perspective. And his perspective is of that of a 4-year veteran quarterback. And it's very interesting to see that from an 18-year-old, fresh out of high school with all the pressure on his world, and considering just how the team has rallied around him, and just, in just these, since he got to campus, how confident, Mekhi Gaber, after the UTEP game, to be able to have the confidence to come out and say, nah, he's different, right? And we saw that in the game. So I think that shows a lot just behind the scenes. He's earned that respect from the players, and that shows a lot about what he's done in his preparation. And again, we'll get in Satterfield's comments as well, and he was talking about the team around him needs to be better at execution and stuff like that. So we'll get into some of the stuff that maybe he's talking about in regards to that. So BA Coaches, so what's up, Ben? Go Big Red. I've been telling y'all from March 2023 that Matt Rule is the guy to build the culture, and that he has done, right? It was interesting, just the complete opposite dynamic of, the Matt Rule and the Dion hire, and that's what's made this so crazy. And it's just like, Matt Rule has built a foundation, right? Dion built a house of cards, and it's toppling over. That is the same team basically that we saw last year. So that going into the game, and after North Dakota State game, is the same exact team that we saw last year. And even the offensive concepts that they ran, even the defensive stuff that they ran, were the same things that they ran last year in a lot of ways. They didn't change up much at all. So 2001 Colorado destroys 95 Nebraska. Yeah, I don't think even you believe that. I think we've all been telling us Rule's the man. Yeah. It's one of those things when he's first hired, there was a little bit of a among the fan base, a little bit, kind of a question mark. I think a lot of people didn't know what to expect. I was a fickle guy. I like Matt Rule, but I guess I didn't know enough about him or dig too much into his history. And I knew his history, but what he was doing at Carolina and stuff like that, I didn't really research into that, realize, the situation he was in and what his plan was there. But Rule just knows how to do this. He 100% knows his system, and we've seen that since he's got in, to college football. Because what showed me a lot about Matt Rule when he first came on was the fact that we're in this constant changing college football world, and he was out of the game for a couple of years during that big change, that a huge period of change. And when he comes back, though, you see a lot of people changing up how they do things completely. He came back and he brought the foundational ideas of what he did at those schools, right? And just molded a little bit towards the portal, towards NIL, right? And we heard it in his press conference talking about the social media impact, of players and recruits that see this stuff on social media, and how big it is for, everything that went down this weekend, promoting an environment like that. Trying to, he said it's in the details, even to that, down to the music they play, down to the timing of stuff. It's nice to see a coach that is actually coming out and kind of acknowledging those things, right? Because those are things we know, but our social media team was doing a good job, but you can tell a clear jump, in the Chasing 3 document, all this stuff, the way they post the videos, the Mekhi Gaber video they posted about, just kind of that little sketch of him running down on the kickoff, and his statements, and everybody saying he's crazy for saying it. It's those things, right? And so he understands that, the balloons, bringing back the welcome to your worst nightmare, how big that was to the fans. And that it just only helps the trust between Matt Rule and the fan base. And that's why he's grown so much already on top of just what he's done with the team. But he gets it, right? He understands what fans want, what recruits want. And I don't know if necessarily, maybe we had that in the past where they understood, but they weren't changing things enough, right, with the times. They weren't really coming out and saying like, "Hey, we're focusing on this," like, or coming out and basically talking to the fans and saying, "Here's what we're doing for you." And I think that's a big part of what Matt Rule brings to this fan base. Number 23, Nebraska this week. Congrats. How far will they go this year? I'm going to get into that a little bit. Nebraska right now, believe it or not, we were looking at a schedule before the season and talking about how easy it was. The remaining strength of schedule, which is with how things have shaked out right now. I saw it earlier, third hardest schedule in the Big Ten. So that is something of note there. But, we're going to dive into a couple of those teams too. Number 23, Nebraska this week. Oh, Cliff. What's up, Cliff? Got you on both pages. I appreciate you stopping in, Cliff. And I'll go give the Michigan channel some love. They're going to be live after us over there. So Ohio State puts 50 on Nebraska. This is like 4 shows in a row. I've remembered to hit the like. Oh, great reminder. Never mind me. If y'all do not mind dropping a like, it really helps me out. It'll help get people in here as well. I'm really bad at asking for likes, so I appreciate you reminding me of that. So what's going on, Dion? Yeah, don't worry about him. Just let him help my algorithm by throwing some comments in here. I'd also like to respectfully point out that Nebraska football is undefeated since the formation of the BA coaches. So you're welcome. Sometimes correlation equals causation, I guess. We got to give Coach BA the credit. All right, and just to Puff fan, Nebraska had the last laugh. That is another thing. The big takeaway that I love about this, right, is who knows if we ever play Colorado again with the way that they're transitioning to wanting to do the scheduling with, all conference, opponents and some cupcakes, right? And on top of that, Shadur and Dion will never have another shot at Nebraska. And that, we got to find solace in that. And we'll get into why I think Nebraska broke Colorado, but I think we've been seeing a lot of it. So happy for Nebraska players, coaches. Great to see game plan went well for them. Absolutely. Do you think Matt Rule's turnaround is on schedule or ahead of schedule? Too early to tell. I think it's a little too early to tell. I do. Now, I will say I expected Nebraska to be good this year. I expected Nebraska to beat Colorado, but I think they've exceeded my expectations so far. But I think I just want to see how the Big Ten shakes out when we get to a couple of these more physical teams that I'll talk about. And I think then we'll see, right? Because we're clearly overmatching Colorado. But my thing is, I think this is in terms of culture, the culture is completely turned 360 to what I anticipated. I thought that was going to take a while, but the way this team is bought in, the way they talk, the way they operate is all Matt Rule's kind of, mindset that he's kind of ingrained in them. And the culture to me in terms of football, like, okay, like maybe, we're expected a year to jump, but in terms of just how the culture is, how this team looks on the sideline, how many young guys that are getting meaningful action, there's a lot of elements to it that are way ahead of schedule and what I anticipated. And turnovers are another one this year. But again, just in terms of, I just want to see a couple more games. I think that's, and see a couple Big Ten games and just see kind of where we stand everywhere. Illinois would be the first real test. Absolutely. I'm going to dive into that as well. I'd love to see the actual Colorado fans, not Dion fanboys, start saying all the stuff about Sanders' family was saying last year. Exactly. That's where the kind of implosion's going in, right? There's a pool, but in the Colorado fan base, even of some shows even giving up on Dion, and apologists of him, because again, what we saw out there in BA, I don't know if you've watched the film, it was the same concepts that we saw last year. They didn't change defensively. They didn't change offensively. And all we heard was how they have Shermer this year, and how he's going to change the game plan from UTEP week 1 to Nebraska week 2. They didn't change anything. And that showed. One team was coached, one team wasn't, and that's been the knock on Prime this entire time. How do people know he's a good coach? He's a good recruiter. He was at Jackson State playing with 4 and 5 stars against unranked guys or 3 stars. That didn't tell us anything. Now he's at a Power 5 program, and now you see the ability to make adjustments aren't there. Even said in the post-game press conference when they asked about what adjustments needed to be made, even at the end of the game, he said, if we knew, we would have made them. Well, at halftime, you're supposed to go make those adjustments. So any Colorado fan saying they made adjustments at half, that changed things. That they didn't. They really didn't. It's been a long time since I've seen that sort of intensity and drive from any Nebraska football team. Buffs could not match it or deal with it. Absolutely not. The physicality was insane. Favorite stat of the weekend, the last time Nebraska was ranked, September 7th, 2019, when they lost to Colorado 34-31. It's poetic they ranked again after beating Colorado. And I think it's our highest ranking, if I'm not mistaken, since 2014. Because I think in 2016, we're in the top 25 and got, immediately knocked out. Correct, some Buff fans and videos are turning on Sanders while other members of his cult are making excuses for him, which is expected, right? Those people are they're going to ride on the coattails of those guys, and they're going to blind themselves to what's going on. So I saw a Colorado full kind of a video of a guy who was kind of on the sideline there, and watching the game, and he basically, and I know a lot of people are saying this, but he basically said the only reason that Nebraska won was because of the crowd. He said the crowd won them the game tonight. And there's just a lot of cope going on, I feel like, with what went down. How are pancake blocks holding? We're going to get into the officials. We're going to get into that for sure. Let's go ahead and dive into, and again, if y'all don't mind, as you're filing in here, if you don't mind dropping a like I said, it really helps me out. And drop your comments in here. I'm going to get into those as well. But let's just go ahead and start kind of going into what I saw. I did my post game, but I was at the lake house, so I watched the game from like the eighth row, kind of on the 20-yard line. I was right behind the 94 team, about 8 rows up. And so, I kind of got an idea of what was going on, but I couldn't really see. And so I was able to kind of go back and watch, some of the game back and get a little perspective on what we saw, and just kind of some players to point out. But, Fedoni, when looking at his PFF grades, right? And I got the PFF grades right here. So on Fedoni, it says 47 snaps, 1 target, 1 catch, and a 61.9 run block grade, and a 57.9 overall grade. Now, I'm going to say this. Fedoni, while the run blocking grade may not be the best, if you watch that film back, Fedoni had some key blocks, right? He had some big time blocks in those moments. So, when he needed to be the guy coming around and making a block or sealing off, the inside, he got over and he made that block, right? And he didn't get penalized. And so I think Fedoni deserves a lot of credit for his part, and kind of, that first touchdown, that was Fedoni pulling across, and breaking in there and kind of concealing that, blocking that guy off, concealing that inside edge. And then he made another one that was, I believe it was second or third drive. And it was to the left side. And so a few blocks, I saw him just making key blocks, and I didn't notice him missing too many blocks. But I thought Fedoni looked really good. It was really good to see him kind of get out, not on a kind of lateral type of move, but to get up the field, and be able to get out there and, get a target, show his hands. And I think that's where he's going to be at his best, is getting him up the field and being able to utilize his size and his ball skills. How bad is Colorado? Does Colorado have an offensive line? So I talked about this before. Colorado's offensive line was patchwork together through the portal, right? You can't patchwork an offensive line together through the portal. They are a unit more than anything, and they need time in the pocket together, right? They need time in the trenches together to learn each other, to learn each other's tendencies. And also their quarterback, they need to learn the quarterback. So if you bring 5, offensive linemen from the portal and try to patch them together, they're trying to learn all the system. You don't have a development, you don't have camaraderie, and then they have to learn a new quarterback at the same time. It's a lot to deal with. And that's why I always say the most experienced line is probably the best line, right? Because you can patchwork and you can put people in places like Micah Mazuka, for instance, but the majority of the line are people that have been here. And that's the recipe for success with an offensive line, even a defensive line, very similar, because offensive lines, especially true freshman offensive line, I did a breakdown of 2021, 2022 offensive linemen in an earlier video and just the production of them. And offensive line is one of the hardest positions to start and be successful as a true freshman. One of, if not the hardest, right? Up there with quarterback. It is so difficult. And if you look back at those guys, that true freshmen that had meaningful playing time, meaningful snaps, it was very, very low, right? And that just shows how hard it is. And you saw it out there with Jordan Seaton getting beat left and right. NBC was criminal not showing the light show. I thought they were great entertainment. Also, the announcers are completely boring. Yeah, I didn't watch with the announcers. I heard they were terrible the whole game, though. Deion Sanders was such a smart to his reporters again today. Tell us about do their jobs. Don't ask many questions about this. Exactly. All right. So again, big time by Fedoni there on some of those blocks. So and when talking to Wilson about the game on the post game and talking about the wide receiver in terms of blocking. So here's the grades on the wide receivers. So Nair, 61 snaps, 5 targets, 4 catches, 61.6 run block grade, and a 55.7 overall grade. Now, we're talking about the run blocking on the edges, and I said I didn't really notice, I guess, too terribly much how bad it was between Nair and Banks. And honestly, Banks had an 88.7 run block grade. So not a bad grade at all for Banks. He had 57 snaps, 4 targets, 2 catches, and so he blocked well. And they talked about Satterfield talked about the perimeter blocking, not just from the receivers, from the running backs, but yeah, there were some issues there on the edge, but I didn't really notice too terribly much from Banks. I noticed a hold from Nair early, but I didn't feel like they stood out any more than any of the other guys. I thought perimeter blocking was bad just overall, but I didn't feel like those two stood out, any more than the rest. But he is right. That does need to improve significantly because, that opens up the middle. And, if we can get those edges going and then that, get these guys, get Ramir on the edges and stuff like that, and then really spread out and open that middle, that's going to help so much in Big Ten play. And I think they might try to do a little bit of that against Northern Iowa just to kind of spread them out a little bit and then try to open up that middle so you can send down Dante Dowdle in there and punish them. So now Satterfield talked about the 176 yards of offense and penalties. Now, the penalties out there, there were some issues, right? There were definitely some issues. There were some horrible calls as well. And at a certain point, the refs kind of took over the game. And I think we all, of course, that was the boring part of the second half. They kind of they went a little too crazy. And I think they went a little too crazy on both sides. I do think they missed calls on Nebraska more in Colorado, but there should not have been that many flags thrown. It really just kind of ruined the rhythm of the game and all of that. So, but there were some bad penalties, and those are things they talked about in the preseason scrimmage about about a week, 2 weeks before the season, about they were still having procedural penalties, and so that was something they did bring attention to, and now it's kind of continued. Week 1, it was okay, but under the lights, it's cranked up the intensity a little bit. You can't lose what right? It's very easy to get amped up and feel like you just, hey, let me try to hold some, just see if I get away with it, or I don't want to miss my assignment, but that that can't happen. And so in a big game environment, I'm glad we got to see that, so that way they know what they can build from and just kind of correct those guys in those areas. Sorry if I keep looking down, it's because my neck is in pain. So yeah, I was talking about perimeter blocking being an issue, hands outside, not moving, feet holding. And, the moving of the feet is the biggest thing. That's how you get your base, move in front of the guy, so that way he can't attack your leverage and get you off your heels. And then you won't have to hold. That's the biggest thing. It's just like an offensive lineman, defensive line situation. If you work on the same fundamentals as those guys, then you'll get it down. And the fact that Janiron Bonner, this has thrown me off, the fact that Janiron Bonner has a 34.3 run block grade, I thought that was going to be one of his strengths. Coming in as a fullback, somebody who knows, the gritty details of how to block and has worked on that side of his game. I'm very surprised at how poorly the run blocking has been from Janiron. So I'm curious to see how that holds up. He got that holding call, I believe in week 1, 2. So yeah, I'm curious to see if that continues, or if that's just kind of a discipline thing between everybody and they just kind of come up together. Now, let's get into the running back room a little bit. Drop your comments. What do you think about the running back room and kind of the current situation? Now, I will say this. I am not 100% sure what is going on with Emmett Johnson, right? Because I am a huge Emmett fan. I've sang his praises the whole time. Um, but Emmett looked like the best running back in week one. Of course, Dowdle looked great in the beginning, but you could argue he looked the best, but then he fumbled and, didn't come back in the game. But Emmett Johnson, I felt like, just kind of looked like he had a quick step, very explosive, shifty in that week one game, had that big run. And, now we have Satterfield talking about, and I will say this, Dante Dowdle has kind of overshot what I thought he was gonna be. So I can say I was completely wrong about, I thought Dowdle was gonna be behind Gabe, behind Ramir, the experienced guys, and kinda get some reps as the season went along, get better as the season went along. But the work he put in, you can tell. And you can tell why he was rated so high, right? It's there's a reason why he's done this, and that's because he was a top 10 running back in 2023, like I said, in that 2023 recruiting class. And it shows, right? That's the difference in talent. But Ramir looked great as well. Ramir is a great change of pace back, that guy who can really get on the edges, is fast as all hell, even coming off of, his injuries. So, but talking about Emmett and Gabe giving him availability on third downs. And so I'm not, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure if they're just riding the hot hand at this point or what's going on with that. So I would be interested to try to dive a little deeper into that. But let me know your thoughts on this running back room. Because yeah, I don't know what Emmett has done. He protects the football. I don't know what he has done to kind of um, fall a little bit further behind. But maybe they just want Dowdle to be the guy who's just running physical in your throat, Big Ten type of running back. Ramir Johnson be the change of pace, and then Emmett Johnson's still young, so he will be there next year as well. Implementing him in the game plan. He's already used his red shirt, so I've seen him on special teams and get you a tip and stuff like that too. So we'll see how that transpires as the season goes along. What's going on, Moonbot? 10 points were on the ref, not on the D. Should have been 42-3. We had poor special teams play. Nebraska with so many good football sportscasters. All of them are good. However, voice you, my man, top three. Hey, I appreciate that so much, man. Thank you so much for the kind words. And shout out to everybody who, kind of always supports and drops in here as well. In my opinion, all backs are running hard like they've been shot out of a cannon, but don't know if there's any game breakers there. Dowdle may not be right now, but I think he will be. Just because again, he didn't get, he only had 100 something yards at Oregon, so he was a freshman there, didn't get a ton of touches. So they didn't get to really see, he averaged 5 yards per carry and a little bit of action he got, but it wasn't enough to really show us what he was capable of. And so I think he very much has the potential, because this is the most game action he's got. And he's done nothing but come out here and just be downhill. Now, albeit against lesser competition, I think the first test, like we saw earlier, the comment section, is going to be Illinois in terms of that kind of physical attack against a physical defense. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is how he grows throughout the season. But 100%, I think he has the potential to be um, a game breaker type of guy. I'm curious to see just how the running back room continues to rotate, though, to see how, if he's going to be relied upon heavily for the majority of the season, or if there's kind of going to be this, mixture depending on the game situation and stuff like that. So, because I did go on Big Ten Ted show, and in my preview, I said I expected them in the first half to come out and use a lot of Dante Dowdle just to really wear down that Colorado small defensive line, because, again, he explodes it, through the hole, and just, he attacks with a level of physicality that we haven't seen from a running back in a long time. And so I thought they would bring him, rotate in Emmett Johnson a little bit more in the second half, and that didn't happen. So yeah. Emmett getting caught from behind seems his only flaw. Yeah, outside of that, a little bit of top end speed issue, but outside of that, I just feel like he's got a lot of things going his way. Dowdle told his dad he would get a touchdown. Dad said, "Don't be jumping players." He must have forgot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's like a first year guy, exactly. ABC instead of Ragdoll, Colt McCoy. Um, subscribe and smash the like button. Husker fans are truly best band, period. Absolutely. And that's the one thing I want to say when I was out in Nebraska. Like, man, everybody out there is incredible. Nebraska is such a great place. I almost hate coming back to Arizona, but like, man, like the vibe out there, everybody was, cool, having a good time. Like every time I'm out there, like fans are incredible. And it's like sometimes I don't think we give our own fans enough credit, around us when we go out there and see this environment. Yeah, yeah. The fans, whoever, all of you that were there, incredible. Dowdle must be a blocking, catching better. Dowdle probably has action passes waiting for him in the future. Yeah, sorry if my eyes are watering. It's because my allergies are flaring up. So I apologize about that. Big difference when we have no or few turnovers. That's been the biggest thing, right? Turnovers. I think we had 7 through 2 weeks last year. None are, well, Dowdle's was turner, so 1 this year. Oh, yeah. Big difference, right? No interceptions. I think that's the biggest one, right? And no interceptions, no turnovers from the quarterback position. That was the biggest thing. We're gonna occasionally see a turnover from the wide receivers or the running backs, but the quarterback room, the quarterback, leader of the team, he needs to be the guy leading this offense. He cannot be turning the ball over because then that is contagious. All right, get into a little bit more of this stuff. And again, I appreciate all the kind words, y'all. Thank you so much. And yeah, let me know about Colt McCoy's job on that. Again, I don't like to listen to the commentary when I watch back through. I don't really want to kind of be phased by that, or listening to that, not paying attention to what I'm watching on the field. So, all right. Then he talked about matching Dylan's intensity. I think this is what I was talking about earlier. He doesn't want to be less aggressive because he's a freshman, which I love that because when we talk about true freshmen starting quarterbacks, and you see those guys sometimes, Trevor Lawrence's and all those, the ones that come out firing and the ones that come out and do great things, those guys really, they kind of let them go, right? And they don't pull the leash on them. They let them lead, they let them operate because that's how they've always operated. If you have a quarterback who's led an offense, for his entire career through every level and been the guy, then he needs to come here and have that same control. And you need to trust him to be able to come out and have that same control. And again, he proved himself in that with the preparation. And that's why, they're not going to be pulling the leash on him. They're still going to want a balanced attack, right? But they know that they can unleash Dylan whenever they want. They trust him with the deep ball. We saw that one down the right side that was just a little bit long, right? They trust him with those things because they know he's going to make the right decision. Last year, there was a lot of risk and kind of letting the ball go down the field because we didn't trust that the ball was going to get there to our people, right? And so that's why I said last season I didn't like the flack Satterfield was getting because, he really had to work with what he had, right? The injuries mounted up. He didn't have a deep passing game. And the way he likes 12 personnel, right? He likes to get out in 2 tight end sets. He likes to use the physical run game to set up the deep pass. And we've seen that this season. He didn't have that ability last year. So that's why his offense really, really struggled. And, he got a lot of the flack for it. But I think now we're starting to see it. And again, there's some questions about overly conservative, ness and stuff like that. But he alluded to some of the execution issues as well. So now moving on to some more about Dylan, right? Because when he was talking about matching his standard of execution, learning the playbook, etc., he, what he's doing out there and what we're seeing, because you see a lot of people are praising Dylan Raiola, but then you see the detractors kind of say, oh, it was 185 yards, and stuff like that. But that, that's not his execution, right? And that's him taking what the defense is giving him not putting the ball in harm's way, him being a smart, methodical player who we knew he didn't have to come in and be a world beater immediately. We know he didn't have to be a world beater to beat Colorado. We said he needed to protect the football. He was efficient and he protected the football. And so what that's alluding to is a lot of missed assignments in the second half that also contributed to the offensive, stagnant, it becoming more stagnant, but also at the same time, I do think we got very, very conservative with our play calls and we should have done something a little different to light a fire. The officials, now this is one aspect that doesn't help. The officials really ruined the rhythm, right? The entire rhythm of the offense was broken by flag after flag after flag. And that's why it was hard for this offense, I think, to get going in the second half because you're riding off momentum, you're riding off the crowd, you're riding off the flow of the game, and the officials kept throwing a flag every single time, every single play you were looking for a flag, and it would be out there, and that's frustrating, and it gets the offense completely out of rhythm. You could be between second and third down or third and fourth down, and all of a sudden you've been sitting for a second, and they're talking for however long, and then you got to go back out there and you got to run a play. Where if you just had a good play to get you there, then you're riding the momentum, get up to the line, let's run a play, that type of deal, even though Satterfield's a huddler. But you get my point. It's a rhythm thing with the offense that kind of gets mixed up there. So there was a few things in the second half that kind of, I think, led to that more so than just the play calling. But you heard him talk about the consistency and execution. And even when they're up in the game, don't get sloppy with that, because in the beginning, you got to think like, they're like, I don't want to be the guy to get a penalty. I don't want to be the guy to mess us up. But then when you get up 28-0, you get complacent because then you're like, okay, like you're a little bit more relaxed. And he talked about that, being relaxed, because, they're not hanging on every single play. You're in a position now where it's going to take a lot of time for them to come back. They may not even have enough time to come back, and you can't let that fade thinking it's not going to matter. So, moving to the offensive line, it talked about the progression of the offensive line. Let me get into the offensive line's PFF grades here for you. So here's the offensive line grades. Now, by the way, the offensive line did a excellent job. Excellent job. We've seen more growth from them, another jump from them. So Turner Corcoran, 72 snaps, a 71.4 run block grade, 37.4 pass block grade, 64.3 overall. He graded out as the best lineman. Ben Hart, 72 snaps, allowed one QB hit, 2 hurries, had a penalty, 69.5 run grade, 42.4 pass grade, 63.4 overall grade. Now, the overall grade was the second best. However, penalty, 2 hurries, a QB hit. Now, Justin Evans, moving over to Justin Evans, 72 snaps, no sacks, no QB hits, 2 penalties. Justin Evans does a great job in blocking, but he's a sophomore. He's very young. He's got to learn, because he came in late last year. So he's got to learn, these big game situations, being in those moments, and just understanding that those type of things can happen. Graded out 65.8 run grade, 61.4 pass grade, and a 62.2 overall grade. But again, it's the penalties, the efficiency. Ben Scott, 72 snaps, no sacks, no QB hits, 1 hurry, 1 penalty, 56.4 run block grade, 74 pass block grade, 60.2 overall. Micah Mazuka, 61 snaps, no sacks, allowed, no QB hits, 1 hurry, no penalties, 55.3 run block grade, 51.2 pass block grade, 56 overall. And Lutovsky got in for 11 snaps. So yeah, they graded out very similar. But I think this offensive line is going to just continuously improve as the season goes along. Again, as they understand, Dylan Raiola, as they understand this offensive flow, and as they just kind of get that cohesion as a unit again. We got the injury early on, have, some pieces moved on this offensive line. So, give it a little bit more time to gel, and let's see how they turn out. But I see another step this offensive line has taken overall in terms of just their overall play as a unit. And I think we'll continue to see that grow as the season goes along. We're going to need that against Illinois. That'll be a big time test there. All right, let's go ahead. And before I dive into a couple more of your comments, I'm also going to go into real quick. I'm sorry. Let me pull my notes back up here. Tony White talking to. So, before I get into that, talking about getting Jalen Lloyd going. So looking over here at how many snaps Jalen Lloyd had yesterday. So Jalen Lloyd was out there for 11 snaps, 2 targets, 1 catch, 79.6 overall grade. So he graded out as the second best wide receiver, albeit 11 snaps. Now, the thing that Jalen Lloyd's going to do, and even Ja'Cory Barney, because Ja'Cory Barney had 16 snaps, 6 targets, 6 catches. So excellent game there. He had the highest grade. But so, when it comes to him talking about getting him going, Jalen's going to be one of those guys that it is important to make sure that when he gets open or when he gets, out there, he's inserted into the game plan immediately because he opens up the outside guys. He's going to open up the tight ends, and he's again going to open up the middle because he's a stretch the field type of guy. And I think they want to get that perimeter blocking a little bit better too, to trust, swinging it out on the outside. Nebraska runs a ton of wheel routes, and a ton of wheel routes. So if you watch, when they bring, the speed, coming across, and then just kind of run him up, that was the play that was dropped out there towards the sideline, and that was a simple wheel route where he was just getting chased around and got it up the field. But they also want to run those concepts along with that, where it's like a jet sweep type of deal, right? I don't I don't also know why there's an Iowa picture there. Am I fake? No, I'm just playing. I think it's another streamers in this StreamYards picture. So apologies about that. But yeah, the getting him involved, but it's going to be the concepts that we get him involved with that are going to open him up for the other stuff. And a lot of that starts with, like I said, the blocking of the edges. I have no idea what's going on with my camera, guys. I do apologize here that you're getting an. I keep saying my browser can't access my device, so we'll see if it continues. But so yeah, that just diving into that just a little bit. I love the Tommy Hill pick six. Absolutely, beautiful. Like just excellent play. He sat there and beta. He trusts his ball skills, right? Play wide receiver, so he set off to the back a little bit right, and immediately knew when to plant. Exploded off that first step, and we saw the picture of him going up to get that ball. That's wide receiver level ball skills, right? That's what made guys like if you look at um, Derek Stingley, right? One of the things that make Derek Stingley so good is his incredible ball skills. And he talked about he's been working them since he was 6 years old. If you go watch Derek Stingley play, that guy can stay 10 yards away from a ball, come across the field, track it down better than the receiver can, right? That's why Tommy Hill's special. That's what makes Tommy Hill so important to this team is ball skills also determine, your timing when breaking up a route. It's not just going up and getting a ball. Everything's ball skills. Your ability to break on a route, your ability to understand route concepts with the receivers as well, and all of those things like lead to him being as good as he's gotten. And coming from being in the wide receiver room and not even being in, being a depth piece on the depth chart last year to what he has become now, he's going to continue to get better as the season goes along. Yet again, all right, you would miss AZ in the winter, Justin. Yeah, probably. I'm not very good when it comes to cold. I've only been in hot climates. I was overseas for 3 years. I grew up in Houston. I was stationed in Georgia. Now I'm in Arizona. So Tommy only needs 6 more INTs to hit my preseason pick guess. DR really chalked it up another notch with the commercials. They have time to run a locker room, take a nap. They only got hit once by Colorado. Yeah. Let me see here. Hold on. I had the other stats of the overall lines stats. I got to find those though, in terms of hurries and stuff like that. We haven't stretched the field much. The speed will show up in the Big Ten play. Oh yeah, I apologize. By the way, the PFF snaps don't have that full line grade on here, so that's why I'm missing. So really saw some good running back assists to the left side. Corcoran spilled deep on the running back, then reset his feet and took him back on. There's hope. And those are the things we weren't seeing previously from this offensive line, right? There was no ability to recover. They were having a really difficult time, even just exploding off the ball. It seemed like the explosiveness wasn't there. It seemed like their feet were all messed up. And, they had a quarterback that put them in bad situations as well. And that was a combination for disaster. So, but they even took a step last year with a quarterback that put them in tough situations, tougher than they've been in before. And so now having a guy like Rel in there is going to continuously help them to improve as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive into real quick. I want to dive into a quick talk about Christian Jones' commitment and what I think this means moving forward as well. So as we know, Christian Jones is, our top basically defensive target. In-state recruit. Let me get my notes on him. In-state recruit, 6'2", 215, right? The thing about Christian Jones that makes him special, and watching, his film, and I've watched it time and time again just because it's such an exciting player. And I'll probably do a film review at some point on him. Number 161 in terms of national player, 19th best linebacker. He's just insanely strong, right? Insanely fast. He's got track speed. and he's strong. He's aggressive. He's physical. He's exactly what the hard nosed edge defensive type of player that this defense needs. But what does that mean for the other recruits as well? We talked about the big recruiting weekend we had out there, how many, players we had out there in terms of just, the 2025 class, 2026 class as well. Jackson Cantwell, your Michael Terry's, you know, um, Dawson Merritt, and we talked about Christian Jones before in Oklahoma. He really wanted to play. Winning was important to him. And so, he wanted to see this season play out and just see how things transpired, before he made his announcement. But he was, it was Oklahoma out. Now Oklahoma comes out and drops a dud, has a terrible offensive performance against Houston, 16-14 win. He sees that environment. He gets to see an inside view of what the locker room's like, the team's like, and he immediately bought in, right? He said he wanted to wait and see if Matt Rule could flip the culture and make it something, that he wanted to be a part of. And we've talked about this offseason, how many players talk about, and even recruits that come on campus that talk about the culture, that talk about the camaraderie with this team, that talk about the leadership of this team, that talk about the family orientedness of this team. And this further, proves that. Just Christian Jones, just being in that locker room, being around those guys, he felt that enough immediately to where by week 2, he's already made his decision. And that was incredible. But what that means moving forward in the momentum department for recruiting, I think we probably might have a better chance with some of these guys than even we thought, right? I think Dawson Merritt, I think Nebraska has a really good shot at Dawson Merritt. We'll see. But it looked like, for the most part, every single recruit, them being in that locker room and being able to get a feel of what it's like in there. I think that puts a lot of these players, Nebraska a little higher on their radar than we expected. Michael Terry, I think Nebraska's very much in this race right now, right? I think Michael Terry's still going to go out to the Georgia-Texas game. We'll see how that goes. But, depending on how that goes, who knows? Because if that doesn't go well, he has, this memory of Nebraska. And we get a player like a Michael Terry on top of, maybe even Jackson Cantwell is going to be tough to get from Missouri. But, if we land a couple of even these guys, and I think Christian Jones could be the first domino and maybe a couple more of these other guys committing as well. But yeah, the momentum that we might get from recruiting, it just, like I said, just started with kind of them talking about it. And then immediately, late Monday, we get a announcement about Christian Jones. So just a huge overall commitment there and a good sign going forward. Now let me move on to Northern Iowa, just real quick. I'm going to dive into them a little bit more as the week goes along. Now, when talking about Northern Iowa, Tony White, was talking about the challenge that they face with them. The Northern Iowa running attack. Now they have a couple of running backs that I will bring up on screen here. So let me pull this over here. And these are the guys that, in terms of running backs, that he was talking about here. So this first one's going to be Ty Edwards. Now, Ty Edwards is the main one that I think we need to be concerned with. He is 6'4", 230, right? It's not often you see a 6'4" running back. I know we saw Braylon Allen in Wisconsin a few years ago. He was tall. He was a monster, but just a big, strong guy. Tony White said he's bigger than some of our linebackers. And again, the uniqueness about the 3-5 is it is able to keep up with more spread offenses like Colorado. You replace a defensive lineman with a defensive back to speed up your defense a little bit. Now we get to go against the power run scheme, right? And we get to go, our defense gets to line up against a big, bruising type of physical running back. And, we'll see, because you sacrifice some size in the 3-5. So it's a good test for our defense to be able to go in there against a heavy, a big running back, kind of like he said we faced in Illinois. But 30 carries for 315 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 10.5 average. I mean, they played Valparaiso and somebody else I've never heard of, ITT Technical Institute or something like that. But yeah, so Ty Edwards is going to be the main, focus, but it's going to be a balanced attack. But Ty Edwards has had the most success thus far this season. And moving over to Amori-Hickson. Now, Amori-Hickson has a lot of experience. Now, let me share this tab. He has a lot of experience, right? He was at Kansas in 2020, I believe. Might have been in 2021, but I don't know if he played um, much there. You see right here, he 40 carries, 60 carries, 218. I don't know what led to his transfer. Not a very good average, but was offered and went on at Kansas. Now, this was a few years back, of course, for Kansas was, I think, good at that point. They weren't quite good yet. So Amori-Hickson, 6', 225, also a big guy, Omaha, Nebraska. So a little bit of a tie there, but they've balanced these guys out. 30 carries for him as well, 186, 2 touchdowns, 6.2 average. So very good average as well, 21 long, but receptions, 3 for a 39, 13 average. And so, yeah, and 1 touchdown. So he's going to be a little bit of a change of pace. But again, this is just a big, powerful bruising attack and he talked about this being a Big Ten preview, right? This will show us kind of what this defense can look at. It's a good preparation game because, like I said, and he said the game plan, of course, is completely different. But in terms of stressing that 3-3-5 that has the smaller defensive players than your usual 4-3 or 3-4. That's going to be interesting to see how those guys. But again, our run, defense was excellent last year against running backs, and we haven't really blitzed much this year. I think 6.4% of the time we blitz. So now will be kind of an interesting time to bring some of those stunts up the middle and really kind of see Tony White employ some of those blitzes a little bit more, so we can see kind of his ability to dial up run stopping concepts and that type of deal, because we saw the pass rushing concepts that he was able to dial up versus Colorado, and it was excellent. So I'm curious to see just how this defense prepares and how they look going into this game in terms of just that preparation and what the defensive system looks like in terms of just the difference in the preparation. So it'd be interesting to check that out. Now, of course, do a video on that as well. Let's see. Try to get some of your comments. Don't believe Ben Scott. He's been so good. Worst time. I know. Yeah, exactly. Sounds like both tackles are used when it comes to pass protection. We haven't stretched the field much. The speed show up in Big Ten play. Yeah, really saw some good running back asses to the left side. Corkhamsville deep. Okay, I've already gotten that one. Well, trust the coaches. Never turn away from stud O-line portal. The staff has done pretty good there. Absolutely. We don't have to talk about kickers. I'm having a good week. All right, Bushini. Let's give a lot of credit to Bushini, right? Bushini, if that punt doesn't happen, that Tommy Hill pick six doesn't happen, right? So credit to Bushini. He had over a 50-yard per punt average. He was a big question mark coming to the season, but didn't do good in the scrimmage. But I guess he just needed to get back out there on the field and just feel the energy, because he's been good so far this season. So we could talk about Bushini. We talk about a positive there. So yeah. All right. Now, one last thing I do want to put out there, and again, this is just, we're starting these up. I did want to give a little bit more, perks to some people. So I'm going to be offering more content to everybody, and I'll go through some of the tiers here. But I did start channel memberships for the channel if you want to support in other ways. I do this full time, so it's really hard with YouTube's ad revenue. It's very inconsistent and stuff like that. So it's always appreciated, but never feel obligated. I appreciate likes. I appreciate views. Just as simple as you being here is enough. So, but just to kind of give you some of the names that I came up with. Channel memberships available: Big Red Loyalists, the Black Shirt Brigade, and the 5-Star Corn Connoisseurs at $9.99. Now, just getting into a couple of these perks, if y'all bear with me here. Again, I'm terrible at asking for stuff, but let me just get into these real quick. We have the Bigger Loyalists, and you'll get a loyalty badge with the Nebraska Voice College Football logo, and I'm going to make some funny emojis here for y'all. So you'll get access to those as well. Black Shirt Brigade members only videos. So I'm going to do, behind the scenes film reviews and extra videos, extra content for members only live streams, even watch parties sometimes. And we're going to do channel hangouts where I'll bring on, maybe a former player or, a guest, and we just kind of hang out and just talk football, priority reply to comments. And then I'm coming up with another perk here, but content suggestions is a big one here, where, I will take y'all's thoughts on what you want in terms of content, and I'll make videos based on what y'all want, etc. So if y'all do want to support, those are available. It's much appreciated. So yeah, I won't beat a dead horse too much with that. Again, I appreciate everything y'all do to help out the channel here. So, but yeah, let's go ahead, and the last thing I wanted to kind of dive into here, looking forward at the schedule, right? Just talking about, Nebraska being ranked at 23. I don't know why people are really surprised or saying, I saw somebody say it's a helmet ranking, but it's one of those things where Nebraska was receiving 16 votes in the very first AP poll of the season, right? In the second poll, I believe it was 30 votes. And now they're in the rankings. It's no secret why. It's not like they made this huge jump into it. It was they were up there as the season started. And so that whole thing's a little bit tired there. We expected them to probably be ranked by week 2, if they came out 2-0. So just based on where they were in the initial ones. But looking at the schedule here, look for the rest of the schedule, because again, they said that going forward, Nebraska has the third most difficult schedule in the Big Ten. And so let's go pull this up here. Third most difficult schedule in the Big Ten remaining. So let's just dive into this and see how, what things have changed, etc. All right. So UTEP got them to beat. Colorado got them beat. Now Northern Iowa coming up. Now Illinois. Illinois is one of those teams that is looking a lot better than we anticipated. Now, when I was talking about them earlier this season, Illinois to me was going to be our first physical test, or Dylan Raiola's first like super physical team that he goes against. And so Illinois and Rutgers were circled for me for those reasons. Those are two very physical teams. Now Illinois looks to be better than anticipated. Bielema's got a good team over there. He's got a good, solid physical team. I do think Nebraska has the better talent. And I think Nebraska's overall coached better. So Nebraska should win that game. However, it'll be interesting to see, again, how the physicality affects, how our offensive line does, the physicality, defense, and all that, how they respond to that. And I think that will be very telling for what we can expect, against Rutgers and the rest of Big Ten play. Looking at Purdue, I'm not too concerned with Purdue. Rutgers, that's a team, Kyle Monangai is incredible. That offense is going. If Callie Manis is their quarterback, he's 2-0 against us. I know he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but he doesn't have to be on that team. Greg Schiano's got that team coached up. They got that New Jersey edge of physicality. That's the style in New Jersey, is that they got that hard-nosed edge of physicality up there, even in the high school level. And so, Rutgers is a team that is under a great coach. I have Greg Schiano. I ranked him in 6 in my top 10 coach rankings coming into the season. So, and then they got a running back, a great running back on top of it. They made a huge leap. And, even last year, their physicality was a problem for even teams like Michigan, right? In that first half of the Rutgers-Michigan game, they were tied at halftime. And then Michigan kind of imposed their will and pulled away late, but that's just Rutgers didn't have the athletes to go with them. So Rutgers is always a difficult game. And I believe that game was in Michigan too. So I hear a lot of people saying it's in Memorial Stadium, but I think that game last year was in Michigan that they gave them problems. So then we come off a bye week. Indiana now. Indiana's putting up a lot of points. I did say earlier that Kurt Cignetti had a lot of guys come over in terms of the transfer portal. So they were a team that could either finish at the bottom, but they had probably the most upside in terms of what the potential is versus what we expect them to be. And they've looked good so far, but I just don't know if they're physical enough to give Nebraska a problem. And I think Nebraska just will struggle with physicality, but I think they will handle the teams that are lesser experienced. And I think Indiana is good, but I don't know if Indiana is good enough to have anything for Nebraska right now. And that leads us, of course, to the Ohio State game. Ohio State's been one of the few good teams that hasn't really showed a lot of flaws, right? So Ohio State, of course, going to be highly ranked coming into that one. UCLA is not good. So that one looks a little easier. USC. Now this becomes a more difficult game. D'Anton Lynn's got that defense playing very, very well. Miller Moss is a really good quarterback. And, I was like, I thought USC to really take a big jump would only have to be, they were 100-something ranked defense last year. They would only need to jump into the top 60s, 50s for them to make a huge leap. And it seems like they've done that. Again, not sure how physical the defense is. They look pretty physical against the teams they played so far. We'll continue to see that as the season goes along, but impressive opening weekend. Again, a lot of people struggled week one. USC did not. They had a tough game, went out there and got the dub, and there's a lot to be said about that. So USC is looking a bit tougher than I anticipated, and I think a lot of us anticipated. Then we have Wisconsin. Wisconsin's they're struggling right now, so they have to turn stuff around quick. They're, Fickle is one of those guys. I don't know how quickly Wisconsin fans will turn on him, but it's one of those things where he can't regress in year two, especially in this Big Ten arm race of, you know, really trying to decipher in this new Big Ten which teams are legit, which teams are not. You don't want to get lost in that shuffle in the very first year in the conference, in my opinion. And then, of course, Iowa losing beautifully to Iowa State over the weekend on that last second field goal. For all intents and purposes, why this schedule does look a little bit more difficult in some areas. Nebraska also looks much more improved in so many areas. So while the schedule gets more difficult, the outlook of the team is higher as well. So take that for what you will, but that's kind of my concept on that. And I'll run through some more of your comments here as well. Before we close out, will we have anyone that we can rely on at the O-line next year? We have a lot of, young talent. Justin Evans is a sophomore. But we have a lot of guys waiting in the wings, really willing to step up. So, yeah, at some point I'll do probably an offensive line breakdown video as we get more film as the season goes along, and we'll dive into some of the depth and what we can expect in coming years. We'll lose a lot of players on both sides of the ball. Yeah, I think this is the biggest thing because I believe in these young offensive linemen that he's brought in, and I think he's shown the ability to turn these players into really good players in a year. These guys are going to have a year of development. They're also going to get some time on the field. So I think the guys are going to be willing to step up next year. They're going to be coached up the right way. You're not, it's one thing to have a guy who's really green and raw and coach him up. Now, what's really difficult to do, it's hard to break bad habits because you kind of have to coach those out of them and then coach them back up the right way, right? So that's one of those things. Let me get the schedule off the screen. Sorry. That's one of those things where I think, the staff with a clean slate with some of these younger linemen, but also, a couple of tenured linemen on the line next year I think it's going to be a really good offensive line. So yeah, this right here, Jason, the youth on the line, it's a bit concerning anyways. Yeah, I'm not too concerned. We'll see though. Never turn a stud line in the portal. Tiptoe Fedoni, I have 2 touchdowns this week. Let's go. I'm all there for it. Could we please swing Fedoni the right, not the left? I hate watching him make hard plants on that braced up knee. He's probably fine. Yeah, that's the thing. It was nice to see him get open over the middle of the field. The lateral stuff, you can tell like there could be a hesitation there with that knee, especially because, it's a mental block too when you return and, again, just continuously kind of plan on that knee. There's no telling how long that sticks with you. But yeah, that metal brace isn't helping. But Fedoni is a ball player. We got to get the ball in his hands. We got to utilize him, and we will. We're going to have a lot more red zone opportunities as the season goes along, and I think we'll see him play a big part there. I think this offense is still kind of finding itself and finding its potential. But I think once all the pieces are moving how they want it to, then we'll start to see a little bit more of this offensive kind of versatility and what they want to do. Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers, Ohio State, and USC games, Iowa, Wisconsin. It's our year. Let's hope so. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I think a lot of us are coming off of that weekend, coming off of that game, holding Colorado to only 10 points. Really breaking Colorado, right? Like they're in shambles right now. Shooter throwing his offensive line under the bus, them leaving the field early. It seems like Dion is really I don't know. Dion seems stressed out. His beard's getting grayer by the second. So a lot to look forward to, a lot to be excited about. And, stay tuned right here on the channel. If you want to subscribe, like, comment, and I'll have videos coming every day this week for y'all as we lead up into Northern Iowa. So, my voice is going out on me a little bit. Sorry. Like I said, it's still coming back from the game. I had no voice yesterday, but the more I talk, the more it goes out on me. So, probably about time for me to sign off. I appreciate everybody for joining me. Make sure if you want to just once this video goes live, drop a like, let me know what y'all thought. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow in the next video. Peace.